Miami Valley View this morning. We're talking New Year's resolutions and how maybe we give you some advice about how you can keep those New Year's resolutions. Now, we are covering the two big ones. We just talked to Sarah of Yoga Bar about maybe how you can help. We can help you keep up your fitness resolutions. Now we're going to move on to the financial side. These are the two big resolutions for, it seems like every new year, somebody says, well, I need to lose weight, I need to get fit, or I need to get debt free, or I need to manage my money better, or I need to save my money better. And a great way to do that is we got a financial planner with us. It is CEO of Jessup Wealth Management, and his name is Mark, I'm going to say it wrong, Mark McKevely. Close?
You nailed it, Dan. Very impressive.
Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us this morning. I do appreciate it. So as I said, the financial, and I think even above the fitness resolution, I think the financial one is one that, is the most popular one. And what kind of advice can you give somebody if they've decided that this year, 2022, is the year that they start getting their finances in order?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. I think the first place that people need to start is putting a game plan together. I think too often people, kind of just dive right into it to opening up an investment account, and they really don't even have like a goal or objective of what that money is for. So I think you need to start with the end in mind. So say, hey, is this investment account that I'm going to start saving into monthly, is that for retirement, or is that for saving for a wedding or saving for a down payment in a house in a couple of years? So you have to start with the end in mind, because there's very, very different ways to invest money, whether you're saving for retirement or you're saving for a down payment. So for an example, Dan, if you know you're going to buy a house within the next 12 months, I don't want people putting that money to risk in the markets, because at any point we could get a strong correction or pullback of 15 or 20%, and that would be completely normal over the short term. So I'd rather see people keep that money in cash and create a separate savings account for their down payment of their house that they're going to need over the next 12 months. Now, when you're talking about retirement, that's much more long term, right? So it's like, hey, I know I'm not going to touch this money for another 20, 25, or 30 years, whatever it is. And from there, it's like, okay, I'm going to save monthly X amount of dollars into my employer-sponsored retirement plan. I might even open up an individual retirement account if I have some extra funds left over. But especially when coming to investment for retirement, Dan, it's really important that people save enough into their employer-sponsored retirement plans, for example, a 401k, to get the full match that their company is offering. So for example, a company is offering to match you 100% up to 7% of your pay. You want to at least contribute 7% of your own pay into the 401k to get the full match, because if you're not, you're just leaving free money on the table, right? So I think starting with the end in mind is very important. And a big topic that we're discussing with clients today, Dan, is, hey, I have these student loans, or I have this mortgage that I eventually want to pay off. Should I, take a lump sum out and pay off that debt, or should I invest the money? And I think that conversation comes back to, okay, well, what's the interest rate on your debt? If it's very low, like a mortgage that you just refinanced to 2.5% or 3%, then I think it makes more sense to invest that money, Dan, because you have a very low hurdle rate that you have to achieve to make it worth it. So as long as you're averaging more than 3% in your investment accounts every year, it makes sense to invest that money rather than pay off the debt. Now, if you have a student loan that's 8, 9, or 10%, that's a different calculation. And it might make sense to pay that stuff down, but with the ultra low interest rate environment that we're in today, more often than not, it's going to make sense to just keep making those monthly payments on the mortgage or the student loan and invest that money, because you can make more by investing it right now.
I got you. That makes sense. Also, this is one of those things that when we talked to Sarah just before you, she was mentioning, and I think it could apply to finances as well, is don't aim so big. More aim for like small improvements, if that's what you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a kind of a great transition point is, this stuff takes time. Finances take time, and it's what we call baby steps with people. So I don't want people automatically, if they've never contributed to a 401k before or an IRA, I don't want them contributing, 20% of their pay or jumping right in to max out their IRA contributions, because that's going to be a pretty big shock to their financial lives from week to week and month to month. So, when I get the question of, hey, Mark, how much should I be investing into my 401k or into my IRA? And my first answer is what we've already talked about, is contribute enough to your 401k or 403b to get the full company match. But then on top of that, invest as much as you can without financially straining yourself from week to week and month to month. Now, obviously, my world is surrounded by, optimization of numbers, but, we all still have to realize that we're human and we have to enjoy life from week to week and month to month. So, I don't want people to be, constraining themselves from enjoyment in their life just because they want to max out their 401k or IRA. So, another good way to do that, Dan, is that when you get raises throughout the year or cost of living adjustments through your employer, which is going to be a big topic this year because of the inflation we're experiencing, take at least if you get like a 3% raise, take 1.5% of that raise and increase your 401k contribution so that, you're contributing to your retirement, but also you get to enjoy that other 1.5% in the form of a raise where you can spend from a discretionary standpoint.
Right. Hey, that's actually, that's so smart that, why did I just think of that? That makes sense.
Well, it does, because you're not gonna miss it, right? It's like, hey, I wasn't making this much before, so if I just contribute 1% or 1.5% to the 401k, I'm not gonna miss it.
Now, I have a question. Are there ways, like when you sit down with somebody and start talking about maybe future plans, do you talk about how ways they are really kind of sabotaging their own savings or own financing, that kind of way?
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it goes back to the fact that, we need to be, everybody in this country, in my opinion, we need to take more responsibility for our financial lives, right? So, there's been, a lot of talk about Social Security and is it going away? Is it going to be there when I retire? My opinion, I won't get into it too much. Social Security will be there, but if you want to live the way you want to live in retirement and retire when you want to retire, you need to take that responsibility on yourself and make that sacrifice now to invest in your 401k or to invest in your IRA, because when you're looking at retirement, Dan, there's really two levers you can pull. It's your savings rate, so how much am I contributing to the 401k or the IRA, and how long you work. And the more you contribute now to your retirement accounts, that just gives you the power to say, hey, I'm going to step away from work at 55 instead of 60 or 60 instead of 65. Because, I've had the difficult conversations with people before, being the bad guy, saying, hey, if this is how much money you need to spend in retirement to live the way you want to live, then you have to work until you're 70 or 75. So that's why I'm so adamant about encouraging young people to start saving early, because that's just going to empower them to retire when they want to, and not having someone like me say, hey, you can't afford to retire at the age you want to retire.
Right. Yeah, I gotcha. And, and I think a lot of people, without some sort of advice from others, especially yourself, they'll look at it, he's like, you know what, I'm just going to cut back on my daily Starbucks visit, and that'll help me save some dough.
Right, exactly. And I think I want people to focus on the bigger items rather than that. And the way and this kind of ties into budgeting, Dan, a lot of people in the financial world or advisors, they're like, you can't go to Starbucks every day and get that $5 latte or coffee. Yeah. But I kind of flip it on its head, and it's like, hey, if that's important to you and that makes you happy, that starts your day off on the right foot, by all means, go and get that latte or that coffee every day. But then we have to do some work on the back end and look at the budget and say, hey, what am I spending money on right now that doesn't necessarily bring me that same amount of joy as that latte from Starbucks every morning, and we'll cut back on those things. So I like to kind of flip it on its head and say, hey, look at your budget, spend money on things that you love, and just try to cut out the things that you're spending money on that aren't as high of a priority to you.
Yeah, gotta enjoy life, Mark.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. All right. So I know we're only in a couple minutes here, but I know achieving financial goals can be so tricky. So that's where people like you come in. So give us an idea of like what you do when you sit somebody down.
Yeah. So when we sit someone down, we start with the data gathering process. So we pretty much request everything that's important in terms of people's financial lives to get a total picture of what we're working with. So usually we'll start there. We'll start with a full financial plan. So we utilize software to do financial plans for our clients. And pretty much the nuts and bolts of it, Dan, just to keep this conversation short, is we get all of this data from all of our clients or someone who wants to work with us and say, hey, if you do nothing different from what you're doing today, this is what retirement could look like. And then from there, we can make recommendations and say, but if you do X, Y, and Z, this is how much better retirement's going to look like, or this is how much earlier you'll be able to afford to retire. So it's starting with, hey, if you guys don't change anything for the next 20 years, retirement's going to look like this, but this is how we can enhance that by making these small changes over the next 10, 20, 30 years of your working career so that we can get you to a point that you want to be at by the time you retire.
Nice. So that leaves us with, if people are like, this sounds like what I'm looking to do for my New Year's resolution. How do we get a hold of you? How do we get sitting in front of your desk there and get this advice?
Yeah. So we're located on Park Avenue in Oakwood, Ohio. It's just up the street from the University of Dayton. We have an email for new people that want to work with us or talk with us, and that's inquiries@jessupwealthmanagement.com. Or someone can just call in the office. Our phone number is 937-938-9105. And then we'll be able to sit down and someone will be able to talk with an advisor about their certain situation. We have a bunch of different service levels for all clients, people that are just starting out, coming out of college, or those who are just getting close to retirement. So I would encourage people to reach out. And if it's not us, just reach out to a professional or an advisor that could help you through this process, because I kind of make a comparison, Dan, to, hey, if I was ever in a situation where I had to go to a courtroom, I wouldn't represent myself because I wouldn't know what I'm doing, right? And it's the same thing with working with a financial professional. Our industry used to be a lot more sales-based, but it's transitioned to a lot more advice-based, where someone can come in and just get unbiased advice on their situation. And it's always nice to talk to someone who's not emotionally attached to the finances like someone is with their own money.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, man, I appreciate your time. Great advice and some great direction from you. If you got a New Year's resolution this year that has to do with finances, look him up. It's Jessup Wealth Management. Mark McElvey, is that right?
McElvey. You got it right the first time, though, so I'll give you a break.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate your time so much, and good luck this year.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
All right, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah.